Scrolling Through, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Scrolling through Facebook, Jimmy stumbled across a friend from elementary school's message. Apparently, Roger had messaged him after Jimmy had accepted his friend request a week or two ago. "How the heck are you, brother?" read the message, sitting silently waiting for Jimmy as he procrastinated from grading some papers. "I'm great, man. Working my life away in a job I hate up here in the land of the Yankees. What about you, man? What's new?" was what Jimmy tossed back to Roger. He knew this was generic, but between the asking Roger more about himself and the Southern boy to Southern boy dig at the Northerners with whom Jimmy now surrounded himself, he thought this would do in a pinch. Roger would, surely, simply be glad to have someone respond to his message. Out of boredom and a strong desire not to do any real work, Jimmy began to climb into Roger's life, at least for a moment. Roger didn't have many friends online, it seemed. This was just like elementary school, if Jimmy was remembering correctly. All the kids back then called him Roger Stodger. This was their attempt at making fun of Roger's severely worn and out-of-date clothing. He looked like a miniature grandpa in the clothes that his family snagged from First Baptist's charity bins. Thinking back on it, Jimmy had shopped out of those same bins. Yet, he'd avoided most of the ridicule that Roger had had in spades. Not all, but most. Roger only had 2 pictures on his profile. One had a little girl in it. He seemed so proud in that one. That must be his daughter. Damn, the love flowing out of that man's eyes was palpable. The other photo was just a blurry selfie that was far from flattering. Good God, was Roger ever gray? Jimmy let out a brief humph. It's not like he didn't have gray creeping into his beard. He saw that Roger was in a relationship, something that was all but impossible for the boy from kindergarten to 7th grade. The girl in question was the only person posting on Roger's wall. All the posts being about one of 2 things: relationships and how wonderful they are, or an upcoming Chris Stapleton concert in Tulsa that she was pleading with Roger to arrange for them to attend. Jimmy clicked on the young lady that Facebook informed him was in a relationship with Roger. Amber Cola. What an interesting name. Not the Amber part, but the Cola part, of course. Sounded like odd branding from an off-brand soda at Dollar General or something. Immediately, Jimmy did what all good Facebook stalkers did. He began to judge Miss Cola quite harshly, based on not much else but her looks. Her curly honey brown hair was thick and beautiful, but the hairline where it all began was even farther back on her forehead than Jimmy's was these days, and that was pretty fucking far back. Her eyes were off-center. It looked like each pointed out in a different direction, almost like a chameleon. Her eyebrows had clearly been sculpted, but they'd been sculpted poorly. They were uneven in all the pictures. Her teeth were painfully crooked and a shade of tea brown. Jimmy's odd imagination jumped to her eating marbles and breaking them all up or something. Stupid-ass thought, yes, but it's the one that came to him. Her eyes were an all but nondescript mousy brown. They were hidden behind thick glasses, the frames of which looked like something out of those old First Baptist bins he and Roger used to raid back in their childhood. Her nose was quite prominent with 2 major humps in it. The appendage looked like a humpback whale in flight toward a meal that Jimmy had seen when he was quite young and on a combo scuba/whale watching trip in New Zealand. Now, The story of how a poor kid got to go to New Zealand, well, that's a good one, but it's for a different day. Jimmy harumphed again, feeling sorry for Roger and Amber. The two of them were still back in that small town where he and Roger had grown up. Those two would probably never get to do much of anything, much less experience the beauty of that megafauna in motion that so resembled Amber's nose. He continued to scroll through Amber's previous profile pictures, feeling quite high and mighty, utterly superior and lucky. That is, till he was about 15 pictures into the series and came across Amber Cola and a very elderly man. She was in a gray turtleneck, with gray-on-gray stripes, a stark pattern of different shades of the color. She looked to have her arm around a slim old man wearing a powder blue Walmart turtleneck. His eyes were the same striking blue as that shirt. His skin was so light that it was all but translucent under the flash of the camera that had taken the photo. His gray hair was not light, but rather a mix of grays that complemented Amber's shirt that was almost resting on it, as she hugged the man with her left arm, leaning in for a good photo. The love in that elderly man's eyes, her grandfather, or her father, or her uncle, or her father-in-law, or former teacher or pastor, or whomever he was to her. That love was even more weighty than the love Jimmy'd seen in Roger's picture with his daughter. Here were these two people, these two complete strangers to him that wholly, truly loved one another. He had snuck into their lives for the most petty of purposes, and they now stared out at him without a shred of judgment. No, just unadulterated joy of simply loving and being loved in return. He felt sick. He felt dirty. Jimmy's eyes welled up and began to spill over. His breathing increased. He saved the picture on his desktop in hopes that he might refer to it again later to remind himself what kind of person one can become, even if for a moment, if one isn't careful. Jimmy navigated back to Roger's page and messaged him a second time. "Hey, Roger! Sorry the last message was so short. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and I didn't have time to respond. But I didn't just want to leave you hanging. Anywho, I really do hope you're doing well. I was just thinking of all those times we all pretended we were dinosaurs out on the playground, stomping and tromping around in those wood chips and roaring till our little voices were hoarse and painful. What do you bet that Miss Holson loved those dinosaur days? She normally couldn't shut us up, man. I saw that you have a daughter now. That must be equal parts amazing and terrifying, eh? Such a responsibility and a joy, I'm betting. I have no young ones, no relationships, none of that. I fear that my job takes up all my time. But that's okay for now. I still have time, I guess, to get all that stuff done. I also saw your beautiful girlfriend. Or is it your fiancé? I'm not sure. I couldn't really tell from the posts. Either way, congratulations, man. It's always amazing when you can find someone to share life's ups and downs with. It makes the ride on this big blue rock of ours all the more enjoyable. Well, most of the time anyway. As I told you before, I'm living up in the world of the carpetbaggers now. To be specific, I live where Massachusetts meets Rhode Island. Still, I come home a lot. And I was wondering if you might want to snag some Mexican food with me next time I'm out. Probably in August? God knows I can't get any good Mexican food up here, and I'd love to catch up with you and hear everything that's been keeping you busy from 7th grade to now, man. Much love, Roger. God bless, and I sure do look forward to hearing from you. Jimmy. Jimmy opened up the CVS photo printing service in his browser. He uploaded and queued up a print of Amber Cola and that old man. In an hour, Jimmy Parsons would have 2 loving sets of eyes on his desk, reminding him who he really was and just how precious everyone is. And he couldn't help but grin. He was looking so forward to hearing from Roger. In truth, love and kindness begets love and kindness. He knew this. His daddy'd always preached it. But he was happy to be remembering it again for the first time in a very, very long time. Thank you for listening to Scrolling Through. The backing track for this piece was taken from the Free Music Archive. It is titled Undercover Vampire Policeman, from the album of the same name by Chris Zabriskie. It is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Thank you to Mr. Zabriskie and the Free Music Archive for making this music available to the masses. Next up, we're in for a treat. An excerpt from the memoir A Life in Progress by Jeff Glauser. Stick around.